Hi, welcome to episode 41 of the American Tributaries podcast, where to break out of the bubbles we all live in, we're using modern technology to explore the various currents of people in our great country, kind of like a 21st century Lewis and Clark journey. I'm your host, Michael Whidden, here in Brooklyn, New York, and thank you for joining me in this exploration of America. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by John McCafferty, who lives in Montana, where he owns and operates a cattle ranch. John and I were connected by Njekwa Beasnael, who was a guest on episode 10 of the podcast and is also John's son-in-law. John, thanks so much for joining me today. How are you doing? And could you share a bit of your story?
Very good. We're doing very well. Thank you. Uh, I'm 70 years old, and I grew up here uh, in this house and on this ranch. And I went to college in 1970. And after I graduated, came back and started working for my dad. And then my wife and I got started ranching, and this where we are right now.
Well, did you know that when you went to college that you were going to be coming back to do ranching?
Yes, I did. That was my
Okay,
life's dream. So yeah, I did.
wow. And how long has ranching been in your family?
Oh boy. Uh, I had one great grandfather that came out in the 1870s and started a ranch in Montana, and another great grandfather came out in 1903 and started a ranch, and so it's been been a long time.
Wow,
Yeah,
wow. And I guess when I hear ranching, I think there are kind of like images that might come to mind, but like what exactly is ranching?
well, ranching we run a cattle. We have cattle. I don't have any farm ground or anything like that. We just have cows and calves and horses. Uh, and so we calve them out, and then we raise the calves on the cows till fall, and then sell the calves, and uh, and then winter the cows, and then start over again in the spring, calving cows, and that's mostly what it is. Um, yeah, I,
So you have baby cattle that you raise for a year and
yeah.
then you sell them on to somebody else?
Yeah, well, not quite a year. We start calving ours. A lot of people calve early in January or February, and we don't start calving ours until the last of February, last of March and April, and then usually in October, middle of October, I sell those calves. Uh,
Okay.
I don't have enough shed space to keep them in and nice and warm, and I'm too old to get up at night all the time, so they got to kind of do it on their own, and
Wow.
nicer weather.
And how many calves then do you have, I guess, each season?
Well, we run about 700 cows, and
Okay.
and then there's my wife and I, and I've got a son-in-law and my daughter. They all help, and then I got grandkids that help too
Hmm.
when they're not in school and stuff. So yeah.
So and then I guess so then what is your, I mean, if there is an average day, I mean, what's a
Well,
typical
okay.
day in your life like?
Well, like right now, right now we try to get the feeding out. We Most years I don't have to feed cattle until end of February, 1st of March. But we've been in a 3-year drought, and so there's not much grass or anything. So we've had to buy a lot of hay and straw and stuff, and so we're feeding right now the cows. And so after the podcast, we'll go out and start feeding, getting them fed for the day, and then getting water. Make sure when it was really cold, like last couple of weeks, we had like 35, 40 below zero weather without a chill factor.
Oh my God.
And so we had to get feed out and water every day. And they it would eat a lot. And
Hmm.
so, but now it's warmed up. We're in the 40 degrees right now. So it's pretty nice.
Is that normal to have like an 80-degree temperature change?
It can change pretty fast like that, but that's one of the biggest changes we've ever had. Yeah, it's
Wow.
big,
That
but yeah, and
and so do they if it was in normal circumstances, are they, I mean, isn't the ground like snowed over, or how would they
yeah,
be eating without your assistance?
yeah. Well, like right now, most of the snow's gone, and because it's melted and stuff, and they can get to some grass. But we can go out there and we'll feed them again. They won't need near as much as they would have during the cold weather. but
Mhm.
we'll get out there and feed them and stuff, and keep things moving around. Kind of feed them on where there's more grass and stuff, and move them around the place like that. Dance them around the pastures, as you say, and so we'll be doing that, and then yeah, and then making sure their water. We've been doing water projects because it was so dry. The water table's really low, so we've had to get water everywhere, and then that's the big concern. Make sure they have water for calving and stuff. Yeah.
And like, so 800 cattle, like, of how much space, like if they were all kind of roughly together, like what does that look like? 800 cattle
Well, well,
in
yeah,
acres.
like I have about 9,600 acres that we
Uh huh.
have, and that we run the cattle on and stuff, and then I lease a little more and stuff like that. So, uh, yeah,
Wow. So they're roaming free usually on the
No,
9,600 acres.
no, we got pastures and stuff,
Hmm.
and so I have when we calve, I bring them in to closer to the barns and corrals and stuff, so that if they're having a problem, I can take care of it. And then once they calve, I kick them out into what we call the spring pastures, and then I don't let anything more than keep them about 150 head or pairs in a spring pasture and divide that up, and then we brand them, and then they go to after that they go to summer pastures, and then we bring them back and we process the calves. We precondition the calves and the cows, and then they go to fall pastures, and then we sell the calves and pricing test and all of that, and then they go to winter pastures. So we move them around quite a bit.
Hmm. And is each pasture like bigger for because they're getting bigger, or what's the difference between that?
The calving pastures are fairly small, and then the winter pastures there and fall pastures aren't quite as big. The summer pastures are the biggest pastures.
Okay.
So yeah,
Wow. For comparison's sake, I have 1,100 square feet
yeah,
for my family of five.
yeah,
So the scope of 9,600 acres is unfathomable.
yeah, yeah. Sometimes it's that way to me too. So,
So do you have to like do you have to like fence off the entire
yeah,
property?
yeah. We fence get them all fenced, and then we got to go over all the fence at
Hmm.
least once a year, usually
Hmm.
more because they can break through fences, and deer and elk tear up fences, and antelope and all of that stuff. And so you got to keep the fences up. You got to keep always going over fences. You're always
Hmm.
fencing.
Wow.
If nothing else to do, you go fence.
I was reading some book. I think it was about Texas, and they were talking about how the invention of the barbed wire was like a big deal.
Yeah, it is. It works, and it does.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a lock on a door. It keeps an honest man honest, and it keeps honest cows honest. You got some cows that you could, I don't know, care what you do, they're going to go through a fence.
Hmm.
And I try to identify them and send them on to the auction yards, and they can go somewhere else.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
So is the magic for the barbed wire that the little like kind of spiky part of it will kind of discourage somebody from kind of busting through,
yeah,
whereas
that's the idea, and I think it kind of helps. It also like they like to rub on it and scratch, and
uh-huh.
that wrecks a lot of fences too. But
Uh,
they do like to rub on it and scratch. So a
uh-huh.
lot of places we have trees that are falling down and everything, and I just put them in there and let them scratch on the trees, and that saves the fences, the dead trees
Oh
and
wow.
stuff. So yeah,
Wow. Is it all flatland? Is it like, or there hills,
yeah.
mountains? Like what's your property look like?
Well, we're in the foothills where we live, and then we got summer pastures up in the mountains and stuff like that, and we got down into creek valleys and stuff, river valleys and stuff. So it's varied, yeah, but it's not
Wow.
real flat. No.
Uh-huh. Okay. And what, like, is Montana like? How would you distinguish, like, for like, for somebody from New York? Like, I think when I picture like what it looks like out there, what it feels like, I just picture like everything, like whether it's Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, North Dakota, South Dakota, all the same kind of landscape, same kind of like livelihoods and challenges.
Yeah.
Are there differences between, say, like Montana and Wyoming and
Sure.
Idaho and?
Yeah, the topography is a lot different. It just depends whether you're in the mountains. Like in Wyoming, have the Bighorn Mountains and different things, and I'm sure that's very similar to us in the Little Belt Mountains and stuff like that. And the Rocky Mountains are even bigger. And then you get on eastern Montana, which is fairly flat and a lot more farm ground and stuff like that. But they've got some the Missouri River breaks, and they got a lot of that run cattle in and different things like that. But yeah, it's all different. It's
Hmm.
nothing's quite the same.
Yeah. And then I guess for Montana, I never realized how big Montana was. Like I
Yeah,
just think about all the states kind of being like rectangular or something, but when you look at Montana, it is huge,
yeah,
isn't it?
it is. Yeah, it'll. Oh yeah, you go from corner to corner to Montana. You could drive. I don't know. You could Britain or drive clear to Texas.
Really?
It's a long ways across.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you get to, I guess, get out of the state, go on vacation? Like
Yeah.
what is like,
Well,
how much do you have?
you actually, what I've always said is that the only time we get a day off is when we leave, and not just to go to town. We got to get plumb away. And
Hmm.
we went to Hawaii this year, and then like Njekwa and is married to my daughter, and we've gone back to New York a few times, and so those are the days that we get away and try to forget about it for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wait, it's interesting. Like I used to be a lawyer, and a long time ago now. But for a lawyer, like you almost really could never get away from your work, even if you were away on vacation. Like the only way to take a real vacation was to find some place where there was no cell phone connection.
yeah,
So like a lot of lawyers, like if they're smart, they're planning like hike, climbing mountains, or they're planning a trip to Antarctica or
yeah.
wherever it is, because you could never disconnect that tether. For you, I guess if you can get away, then you're away. But I'm sure the worries are always there because Mother Nature is fickle at best.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's the my. I wake up at night a lot, at 2 or 3 in the morning, and thinking about things I got to get done. Where's the next problem? Where just looking out for the boogeyman somewhere around the corner here. And when we
Hmm.
got a big day moving cattle or something, I keep going over and over the cattle drive or whatever. What are the holes that are? What do I got to fix before it happens, or what do I got to watch out for? And so you never quit thinking about it.
Yeah. What so when a cattle drive, is it like the kind of the image of like the cowboys with a couple of horses trying to
Yeah,
like shuttle along the
yeah,
really?
yeah. We move most of our cattle with horses. We do pretty near all of it with horses
Uh
and stuff. And so that works out really good. And so our cattle and our horses know the system pretty good.
hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
And are you out there, or is that your son-in-law, or
yeah.
who's the one actually herding them?
Well, that's yeah, me and my son-in-law and my daughter and
Uh
wife and my grandkids and stuff. And then I got a couple of friends. And my brother, he ranches about 4 miles away. And on sometimes he's busy enough too but we don't help each other a whole lot, but we do when we have to
hmm.
and exchange help.
And how long does it take to herd the cattle from one like pasture to another?
Some don't take too long, 2 or 3 hours. Some will take 16 hours and stuff like that. It just depends. And because in the spring when you move them, you've got to keep them all the cows and the calves together. I don't want to take too many at a bunch. And then when we get them to that pasture, we got to make sure that they're all matched up, the cows and the calves find each other. Otherwise, the calf will come back to where the last time he sucked a cow. And so then you got more problems. But so that takes pretty much a whole day when you move them.
And if it takes 16 hours on a longer run, like does that mean you've got to sleep outside for that day, or do you go back in the dark, or how does that
No,
work?
yeah, usually we're getting on back and we get up there, getting going at daylight, and
Hmm.
then hopefully we're done by dark.
Okay. And if you're not done by dark, do you ride back in the dark, or do you camp
No,
or
we'll
something?
ride back. We'll get it
Uh,
done. We'll get her done and then get home.
uh
So,
okay.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I guess it's not. I mean, how far away? Like, I guess 9,600 acres to me, it's like talking about the sun being 93 million miles. I
Yeah.
just don't have any grasp. But like, what's the farthest reach of your land? Like 3 miles, 2 miles,
Well,
10 miles?
The leases are all scattered around in different
Okay.
parts. So like one lease is like 27 miles away, and then another lease is just across the fence line from me and stuff like that. So it just depends. And so
Oh, so then when you're taking them between the pastures, you're going on like public land, or you on the roads? Like, how are you transporting them?
sometimes on the roads, and usually
Mm,
we go on through neighbors and different things. I would much rather chase cattle across country than on a road, because you got traffic and then your fences and stuff like that. But
mhm.
it works a lot better if you can just go across country.
And do you need to then get like you have to negotiate with your neighbors to like go on their property? Is it kind of
Yeah,
understood that sometimes that happens,
yeah.
or
Well, I always ask permission and
uh,
stuff, and then they ask permission to go through mine and stuff. Everybody's got to get along. We're all in the same boat, just different places in the boat. So
yeah?
it's easier to get along than it is to argue.
Are there any neighbors that are difficult?
No, I would say there's some that don't fence real well, and
Mhm.
that's the biggest problem. But there's worse things than that too.
Yeah.
So, but no, actually, I've got some very, very good neighbors. I can't complain a bit about any of my neighbors. We
Mhm.
all get along really well, and they'll do me favors, and I'll do them a favor if I can, and it works well.
How close is your? I mean, like actual like physical neighbor. Like how close is your next neighbor?
Oh, I've got one neighbor down the valley, maybe a mile away, and then
Okay.
uh, uh, my cousin lives on a place that I lease from her, and that's a couple miles away. And then about 3 miles away up the valley, I have another neighbor. And so, how everybody, um, when the old timers came, they always camped along a creek and built their houses along a creek and stuff. And so, if you're along a creek, you're gonna have neighbors fairly close
Mhm.
and stuff. So yeah.
Well, you must have had some really fascinating stories from your like grandparents or great
Oh, yeah,
grandparents
oh
about
yeah.
what it was like then.
Yeah, it's been interesting. You know, even my dad, the things that he got to do. And when I got old enough, we were just on the end of feeding cattle with horses and stuff, and so and then we went to tractors and stuff. But he grew up working horses all the time and stuff,
Mhm.
and was into the move to tractors and things. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. I mean, when I mean, and I don't, I guess I really don't even know the framework to ask the question, but like when did you have was electricity something that kind of came early on? Was it some where you did was there not electricity out there for a while? I
Uh,
mean,
we always had electricity here, and to be honest, I can't really remember when my dad, when he bought this place here, he was in high school, and they had electricity, and so I imagine they got the electricity during the REA thing. The government uh, in the 40s, I would
okay,
imagine,
okay,
and and I remember. Yeah, yeah, I think so. And then the telephone was a big thing when they got the telephone. And when
hmm
I was a kid, we had the Tiger Butte Telephone Company. We were all there. I don't know. There's probably 30 or 40 people on here, and we had to keep the phone up and the line up. And so we'd have a couple work days every year, setting poles and stringing more line and getting that all going and stuff. Those are always fun
wow.
things. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
my
different.
my father was born in 41, and he was on Long Island and near New York City, and I remember he would tell us about like when they would get like coal deliveries and
Mhm.
stuff. So when my kids would hear those stories, it's kind of fun just for them to kind of go back that far to think about what life is like. I mean, they can barely remember. They don't even know life before iPhones.
Yeah, I
So
know. Well, that is, like us, we've got a propane, two little propane stoves in the house, but I'd bet less 50% or more of our heat comes from a wood stove that we
mhm.
use, and which is it sounds miserable, but it's been pretty much the only heat we've had in the house a few times when we get snowstorms, and we've had uh, snowstorms and not any electricity or anything for a couple of weeks or more. And so,
Really.
yeah. So
So when you have a snowstorm and you say you don't have electricity, what do you have a generator?
yeah, we can. We've had a generator and stuff, but usually we just have lanterns, and we cook on the wood stove or a camp stove and go to bed early. So
Wow, it's like go back to like your grandparents' day, great grandparents'
yeah,
days.
yeah, really, it is. It's like that. But you get used to it. You don't get to watch TV, but that's all right too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, you sit by the radio, Hank Crank's radio
yeah,
or something,
that's about
the
right.
Victrola.
Yeah, but yeah, there used to be a lot worse storms. It seems like, and but this last one was cold, and we had a lot of snow. But
Mhm.
usually, it isn't near as bad as it uh, has been on some years.
Is there problems like when it's like what's worse for you, like too much cold or too much heat, like -40 or 110?
Oh, 110. I don't know. Boy, that's bad. That
Uh,
because that dries up water and everything else. When it's
okay.
cold, -40, if I can keep the tractor started and we got the feed, I can get everything handled. It's miserable, but boy, when
Mhm.
it's hot, I don't like that very well. I don't like dry
Yeah.
weather. I like
Yeah.
moisture. Yeah, I like standing in the rain.
Right. So now you when you say calving, you're talking about like when there cows that are giving birth to cows. When you're
Yeah,
using that term calving, that's what that means.
yeah, we'll bring in. Well, I've got them, and then we put them in pastures, and then if it's really miserable, then we sort off the ones that are eminently going to calve, and put them in a couple little barns or close pens. And we have what we call ranch eyes, which we have cameras that can watch them, and so if we see if anything's in trouble, we can get there. And then I try to be out there right at daylight, checking the cattle in the morning, and then last thing at night just before dark. And then I don't get up very often in the night. If it has to be a pretty miserable storm for me to get up,
Hmm.
because I got to get in my sleep, or I can't get nothing done the next day. And
Yeah.
we straw down. We got a lot of shelters and windbreaks, and we straw everything down really good. And hopefully, calving that late, we will be out of the cold and the miserable storms. And mostly we are. Once in a while,
Hmm.
we run into a bad one, but we've been trying to build up windbreaks and stuff like that to
Hmm.
mitigate those problems.
And then, so how many cows do you have that are calving? I guess each season.
It'd be like 700. Yeah.
So you have 700 cows, and you're keeping those cows, and it's their babies, the calves
Yeah.
that you're like raising for that 1 year.
Yeah. Yeah. I calve out in two different places.
Hmm.
And so there's like 350 in each bunch. And so we divide them up, and then 150. Well, after they calve, we tag them, vaccinate the calf and different things, and ear tag them. And then as soon as I know that they've sucked and the cow's in good shape, and we'll kick them out into a pasture. And like I said, about 150 go to one pasture and another, and we divide them up that way. And then
Hmm.
they're that way. And then we feed those pastures. That's when it gets really busy. We got to feed all of them separately, but then we get a good look at all the cows and calves that way, and we doctor if we have to, and then yeah, and then we brand them,
Hmm.
bring them in branding, and usually in May and towards the
Hmm.
middle and end of May, and then June we'll send them out to their summer pastures.
Hmm. And so and after a year, then you let them go. How old are cow or like I guess cattle when they, I guess are slaughtered? Again, I don't know the
Well,
terminology.
usually, yeah, okay. Well, I'll sell them in October, and then it depends on the market. Heifers will take a little bit longer to get them to where. Then I sell them to a buyer or a feeder back in the Midwest. It's where they have been going for the last several years. And heifers will take a little bit longer than a steer calf to reach prime and stuff. And then usually they go. And it just depends on what the feeder has. Some of them try to hit the April market with my calves. Some of them wait until September and stuff.
Hmm.
It's just they got their own little games that they're trying to figure out where to get the best price too.
Hmm. So and then just to go to basics, so heifer is a female
Yes.
cattle, and then the steer
Steers.
is the
Yeah.
male.
Uh-huh.
Now, why wouldn't you keep the heifers to, I guess, to give birth to more
Uh,
cattle? Is it just because you have your stable of 700 or so, or
yeah.
do you?
Well, usually a figure that we'll probably get rid of close to 10% of the herd every year of the cows. And so I'll keep, like 100 calves every year of
Okay.
heifer calves and breed
Hmm.
them. And then they go into the herd the next year
Hmm.
and
Okay.
stuff.
So
So,
then you sell your calves off after about a year. How do they get to that Midwestern person by
well,
train? Or are you?
yeah, we've got scales on the place. And then so then on we call it a shipping day, and we bring them all in, and almost always I've had my heifer calves already sorted off so that we separate steers and heifers, and then ones that the buyer doesn't want into another pen, and the steers get on a truck and head to those. We weigh them and get on the truck, and they go to whoever bought them, and the heifers are weighed and put on trucks and get sent to whoever wanted them. So,
Hmm.
and then
So
there's
they're transported by truck, not
tried by
by
truck.
train.
No, by truck. Used
Okay.
to be by train.
Uh,
My dad would and granddad they would send them to Chicago
mhm.
every year, and then and then that ended in like '66 or '67, something like that. The Chicago stockyards closed down and stuff. So
Okay. So then, and had then those. So then the calves are at the cattle are at the next place. How long are they kept there before they, or I guess, slaughtered
Uh,
and
well,
become,
some places just warm them up. Some are actually, uh, and then some of them are actually going to feed them out until they like 6 to 8 months,
Mhm.
sometimes 9 months, and then they go to slaughter. Then,
Okay,
but yeah,
and and then from there they're just butchered or whatever, and then kind of sent to the various markets to
yeah,
be consumed.
yeah. And
Okay.
then there's some feeders want a specific breed. There's specific things that they want in a calf, and so
Mhm.
that's if you find out what you want. Like certified Angus beef. Angus has gotten very uh, popular that way, and we always had Angus cattle, and then I've introduced the Simmental in there, and so it seems like I've got some buyers that want the Sim Angus calves and stuff. So you're
Okay.
always looking, and then like anymore between DNA testing and different things, you can the bulls that you buy, you can kind of go for different traits like the marbling and how docile they are, the milk size, all there's I don't know, there must be like 36, 37 different traits, and like 12 or 14 are the main ones that you can identify you buy bulls for, and then it's complicated buying a bull. It isn't easy, and then price too,
uh,
is it always figures in there.
how much can I ask? Like, how much does does a bull or a cow, or like how much do these things
Well,
sell for?
like bulls, they can the going to the feed to the registered breeders, they can be up to 17,000 or more.
Wow.
Mostly, I think I paid 7,000 a few times for some of my bulls, but try
Hmm.
to get less than that because that can get pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Cows, uh, uh, like $1,700 for a decent
Hmm.
cow this year to 2,000. In fact, I saw some cows selling for $2,400 this year. So
Wow. And then when you sell, and then when you're selling yours to the, I mean, I'm thinking about like from the wine perspective,
sure,
then that's the market I know for Njekwa. It always is. It's fascinating. There's so much that the end consumer doesn't appreciate about the process. They'll
yeah,
look at like a $10 bottle of wine and be like, "This is so expensive," or a
right,
$20 bottle. I'm like, and I'm like, you have no idea all the hands that get involved
yeah,
by necessity.
yeah.
So I guess that's what I'm trying to like understand is for people when they see the beef prices for what they are to understand like how much work goes into it.
Oh yeah, and then the costs on producing, just for the feed, you know, we've got we got two tractors, the baler, swathers. The swathers like oh shoot, I think that was $180,000 or
Uh,
and the tractor $250,000, and so you try to get that, and you gotta, and it takes a while to get them paid for at
mhm.
that price, and the price of cattle, and then the feed, like this year, because we're short of feed, I usually don't have to buy any hay. And I bought a lot of cake this year, and usually I don't have to buy any cake. The last 2 years I have, which are just pellets and
Okay.
feed for a supplement to the cattle. And
Mhm.
everything, a dry year causes a lot more expenses. And then all of our fuel has, pretty near tripled in this
Mhm.
last couple years. And that's, I don't know, the price. We've got a little bit more increase in prices last year, but it probably didn't cover the fuel cost increase.
Mhm.
And then, there's all kinds of things that go on. Yeah, there's all. It's just like everybody's expenses, and I see on TV and I feel so bad, But man, these, even the Christmas trees, they're saying how expensive they are, and those guys say, I don't have a choice. It's
Yeah.
either raise the price or I'm done. And
Yeah.
that's kind of
Yeah.
the way it is. And like us, we don't really get to set a price on what we get for our product. We're trying to you try to get something that someone wants, and a couple different or three different people that want it, and see how bad they want it. But it's hard to set a price on our
Yeah.
product.
So if I want to find beef from your ranch, is it trademarked or anything like that? Can people order directly from you?
My brother he has a hydroponic plant, and he fattens cattle and stuff, and it's under McCafferty Ranch beef.
Mhm.
Me, I don't do that. I
Okay.
just raise cattle and sell them, and I'm too old to do anything different. I know what I want to do. I don't want to get anything more. But yeah, but he works hard. He gets a lot done and does that. But yeah, he
Yeah.
sells beef pretty much all over the United States that doing that.
Is that right?
Yeah.
All right. I was talking to one of my earlier podcasts. So she has her and her husband raise livestock on the side, and I was interested in ordering some, but I think like to buy the beef from her, I think it was beef, maybe it was pork or something, but it was you have to buy 100 pounds.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
and at
Yeah.
least in New York City, most people can fit maybe 4 pounds of
Yeah.
meat in their freezer.
Yeah, I know. That's the way that was one of our shocks in New York, that a lot of places really, they don't really have, like Hallie's kitchens, they don't really have much of a freezer space or kitchen space.
Yeah.
It's kind of a,
What?
go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was gonna ask so when had you been to New York before Hallie moved to New York City or
Actually, no, it
uh
probably wasn't in my top 100 places to ever want to visit, to be honest with you. I've really enjoyed it. I've saw a lot of things. We've gone to Washington D.C., with Niagara Falls, we've been up and down trains around there, and it's been I've enjoyed a lot about it. And Hallie has brought some friends from New York back to stay with us and stuff, and it's one girl, they had never been out of Staten Island their whole life. Uh, never been out of a city. She didn't
yeah.
know what round bales were, or a wheat field, or things like that. And it's a whole different world.
Yeah.
She went
That
fencing with her, and Hallie and Julia and I went fencing one afternoon. It was really hot, and that was I think it was quite an experience for her. We take
yeah.
side by sides and go on out and everything. So yeah.
That must have been something. I think what I realized like is in New York City. I think again going back to the idea of like we're all in a bubble, and like New York City is a bigger bubble, but it's still a bubble. And I think it's hard to get into the city, but it's also hard to get out of the city. And I
Yes.
was thinking about this recently because even I was talking to somebody who had lived in New York and moved to like Nashville, and he was saying how much easier it was to just kind of hit the road. And I think for New Yorkers there is the issue of like a lot of people don't have cars at all,
Hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
it's easier to almost to fly someplace than it is to rent a car and go someplace because you also
Yeah.
have the traffic. So it's interesting to kind of think about all the different kind of constraints different people have depending on where they live. What was your expectations like when you before you'd come to New York? Why was it not on your top 100 lists,
Well,
top 100 of places to go?
there's so many people and things that felt crowded, and you hear a lot of things. You get on the news. You always get the bad stuff, and how safe is it, and all of those things. But I've been very happy when we've been there. There have been so many New Yorkers. They're not going to go out of the way to help you, but if you need help, they're going to help you. We went to Boston. I mean, those people, they're just falling all over themselves. They can, evidently, I stick out like a sore thumb and asking if I need any help or where I'm going or anything. Um, so I've had great experiences going back
Mhm.
east.
Yeah. Well, my wife and I took our kids out to. I mean, we flew out to Salt Lake City and
Mhm.
then went up through Idaho to. We went up to Grand Teton. We were in Jackson, and then
Mhm.
we went up further to Yellowstone and went to Bear Lake to finish. First time out there, and it was so. I mean, it was so much. It was so interesting, and not just like the nature wise, but also as like I would as we were driving around, it made you appreciate like how much where you live kind of also can affect how you are. Like I think,
Yeah,
and I think to me that's one of the things that I think I believe like so firmly is like everybody's this. We're all kind of the same. There's obviously differences and there's
yeah,
bad people everywhere, but like for the most part, we're all kind of like trying to get by where we live. And there's one thing to kind of go on vacation there, to like to
yeah,
where say Montana, but there's another thing to live there because you
yeah.
have your own challenges, you have your own things that you're scared of, you have your own things that you need to succeed at, and those are very different than if you're in this crazy city with 8 million people.
Yeah, that's very, you know, and there's just things, there's, I know where there's a danger out here and to stay away from and avoid,
Hmm.
where a lot of people, I'm sure they would blunder right into it, and in the same way if I go to New York and stuff. So yeah, it's been interesting. I'm very happy that Hallie went there to New York and we could we've been there and it's been and so we've done different things. We've been to Las Vegas to the rodeo finals and we've been all over different things. And it's fun to go and do things.
Yeah.
But
Jaquad told me how much better the beef is in Montana than in New York. In fact,
yeah,
like probably one of the most one of my favorite clips from the entire podcast I've done now with 41 episodes is when he was talking about how good the beef is. So,
yeah,
do you notice a difference as well being like a, professional
oh yeah,
for so long?
I can.
Really?
Well, like our beef, like here we butcher our own beef and then have it butchered and everything, and it's we fatten it ourselves and things like that, and we take care of it. We know where it is. It's all one animal, and everything else is like that. And then, but like you go somewhere else, and well, usually the steaks aren't near as good as mine and stuff like in the hamburger, and it might be just what
Ugh,
we're used to eating ourselves, how we feed it
right.
ourselves and stuff. So, but yeah,
Now, do you have like particular cattle that you're like, okay, that's going to be for the family, we'll set that aside, or do you like or
well,
how does that work?
well, the calves that don't make the bus, the semis out, usually we keep them, and there might be anywhere from 12 to 17 that don't get sold, and so those are the ones that we'll fatten. We'll run them the whole year, and then the next year we'll fatten them, and then we have some for ourselves, and Julia has sell them to relatives and different people around that buy them, and we've been I don't know. We've been doing this for 30 years, I guess. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
So we got some longtime customers that buy it and stuff.
Okay, wow. So what can you describe the difference in your mind from like when you have the beef from your own cows versus
Uh,
when you're
well,
in New York and have something?
tenderness is a big thing, and taste. You know, uh, I don't really. It's just you
Yeah.
just tastes different to me.
Uh-huh.
Like there's I can taste the difference between. Well, when I grew up, we never fattened anything ourselves. It was always would bring some fat cow in off the ranch, so that was grass fat, and usually a little older. And so grass fat will taste different than grain fed, and so I can kind of tell that. And ours aren't really grain fed. They're only like for 3 months. They're on some pellets, and so it's kind of a happy medium in between. They're not exactly grain fed, and they're not exactly grass fat and stuff. So Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Yeah, you can tell the difference. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Wow. Is there other what other kinds of animals that people raise up by you,
Uh,
or
there's
is it all
sheep.
cattle?
There's sheep and goats. That's the
Mhm.
most thing. Most there's not too much else, and
Mhm.
and a few goats, not many,
Mhm.
and quite a bit more sheep, but mostly cattle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not a lot of like where are bison or
Oh,
like
that
elk
okay. Yeah,
raised?
there are some bison around, and then they got that prairie reserve that they got bison, and a lot of the Native American tribes are getting a bison on their reservations and stuff. Yeah, and personally, I don't really care for bison meat. I
Mhm.
don't. That's just me, and I don't know. When growing up, we ate a lot of deer and elk. Uh, and Julian, she never ever liked it, so I didn't ever do a whole much hunting after
Mhm.
we got married because she doesn't like it, and so okay,
Okay.
well, what's the point then? And so,
True.
yeah,
What else other than beef are you eating, or is it beef every day?
pretty much beef. We got some chicken and a
Uh,
little bit of fish, not
mhm.
much, mostly beef.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and
The one thing I wish I would love to take like a butcher class and learn about all the different cuts, because
yeah,
to me I know by appearance what I like to cook,
yeah.
usually because it's the fastest, but I have no idea what any of the terms mean.
Yeah, I know. That's what I mean. When I one of the regrets of college is I could have taken a meats and meat cutting class, and I didn't. It was they had such long labs, and I couldn't seem to get it worked into my curriculum, and so I didn't. But I wish I would have. That would have been really interesting for me.
Yeah, yeah. Like all I know is the hanger part and the an oxtail.
Yeah,
Those are
Oxtail.
the two
Yeah,
pieces.
yeah, yeah. Jaqua's brought a whole bunch more recipes and cuts
uh,
to us. And everything. It's been interesting. Yeah, have a kind of
yeah,
a chef in the family there. So
yeah,
yeah,
and a sommelier
and
as
a
well.
sommelier. Yeah, shoot. Yeah, I had no idea about wines until he came in into the
Yeah.
family.
Well, I had told him that I was like he should definitely like do some kind of like there should be some kind of like show or something where he goes out there with some wines and like has a cookout with you guys.
Yeah,
I
I know.
I
Yeah, we have I have another son-in-law whose mom and dad, you drink a lot of wine and they enjoy it and know everything. And so we told them that Jaquan took all this, these small yay. And so they would bring out when Jaquan and Hallie come, then they come out and bring different wines and try to find out if Jaquan can identify this wine where he's never missed yet. It's
really,
pretty
yeah.
amazing. Yeah. They'll bring out some obscure thing and he'll smell it and swirl it around and taste it. And boy, he hasn't missed yet. It's
That's
amazing to me.
impressive.
I'm just lucky to tell the difference between red and white. So,
It's a privilege. I did do the wine for 12 years, and like it is a privilege and a joy to like be able to have that be your job, because it's a lot of fun, and it's really a treat in some respects to have like your job depend on how you taste and smell things.
yeah, it is.
Um, so, but I think to me one of the things that made wine like at least the professional levels, what I've seen is like wine becomes almost more like it's like almost like a gravy for the food. And
Yeah.
in some respects, like it's not. I mean, because wine in itself tastes really good,
Uh-huh.
but when you pair the wine with food, it's like you get this 1 + 1 = 3 effect, and that I think is what like that's always what you're striving for, is you want to have that creation of something almost like new, and just makes your eyes roll back, and you're like, just thank God you're alive.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I know. And so that's what he's trying to teach us how to
yeah.
enjoy it and stuff. So, yeah, in Montana, there's not a whole lot of wine drinkers. It's not a big, I think it's getting more and more all the time, but
Mhm.
it's kind of the old rough and tumble beer.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what is like what have you? I guess what would you think is like the biggest? I don't know, like if you like talking to somebody like me, like what do you see as like a big misunderstanding about life in Montana,
Uh,
or something that just
well,
or not known?
oh, I don't really know. I think that is. it's so different. Like this one girl that came out, and she's had several other girls come out, but they, it's so much different than what they expected. Um, you know, it's hard to say what. It's hard to understand what they expect and think. Yellowstone is kind of an interesting show, but I watched one episode and that's all I could handle.
Hmm.
Uh, so it's nothing like that. That's kind of like watching Dallas or something like that. There's nothing not on that much on there that's actually true.
Right.
But there's been some pretty good shows on TV and different things that I've enjoyed. But
Hmm.
yeah, the perception, everything is far apart here. But we do, we've got TV and basketball games, and it's a different type environment. You know, I like when we go to New York. There's a high outside Hallie and Njekwa's apartment. You can see there's a high school and different things, and um, they play their. They have a playground on top of the building, and that's you know I and you go by a playground there, and they've got it fenced off, and there are little kids playing in the playground there, and that's not here. And
Yeah.
man, and it's all on asphalt and stuff like that, and I I feel bad about that. I would hate to see my grandkids have to grow up on that, but so yeah,
Yeah, it's I think that like what you end up seeing is like I know for us like and for me personally I think I like living in the city because I think I'm very I think it's three things. I think that I am uh I think I'm an introvert by nature.
uh huh,
I think that I have a lot of thoughts swirling around in my head, and I think I'm like pretty emotional, like deep
mm-hmm.
down inside. And I think like having a lot of people around is good because it's distracting a
Yeah,
little bit. It's like, and it allows me to act on the things that would be thinking about or worrying about versus just having those worries kind of
mm-hmm.
swirl around in my head. And I think having people so immediately in the vicinity forces me to be less of an introvert.
Uh huh,
So that's why I think I like living in the city, and I think that to me, when I think about like the misperceptions, and I think like the downside is you have like you have those asphalt playgrounds which don't
mm-hmm.
look like much, but like my son 12 and he can go out and within there's like 10, 20 friends of his that all live within like 5 minutes that can just leave their home and walk to the playground and start playing
Mm-hmm.
basketball.
Yeah,
So there's like I guess like that side that like you give up stuff like we don't have a yard,
uh huh,
we have 1100 square feet, and you get that. And I think like like everything else, like right, you just kind of like find what suits you and what gets you through the day, and you kind of make the compromises to make it work.
yeah. It's different. Uh, like my grandkids, we get to go out and we target shoot and we shoot porcupines and magpies and different things like that. And then like when the COVID came, they shut down the school and stuff. And my daughter is a teacher, and so she would have to do her classroom Zoom meetings with her students there, but she'd have her kids all in the morning at 8 o'clock. They were doing their work, so by 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, they were done, and so they'd go with me calving and different things. And it was the best calving season I ever had,
Uh-huh.
and stuff. And they ride with me, and there's so
That's
many
great.
different opportunities by being here that they have,
Yeah.
and which I'm very thankful for.
Yeah.
And like we got to Great Falls, which is our major town around here, is like 30 miles away. But we've got like 10 or 11 miles of gravel road, and we always feel, no matter weather, whatever it is, when we get to the gravel road, we're safe and we're on home. So I'd much rather be on the gravel road than a highway. So
When we were in Salt Lake, we get off the main road to get on a gravel road to drive to some part of the lake that was a little inaccessible, and that was the most nerve-wracking drive I've ever had.
yeah,
Was on the gravel road because I felt so off the grid.
yeah, I know, but that's where we all feel safest is when we get on the gravel road. So
That's funny.
yeah, it is. It's just different upbringing, different places, and all of that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So, if you had to do or could do any other kind of job, is there anything else you've ever thought that would be interesting or fun to do? Whether different kind of animals
Uh,
or crops or.
no, I really didn't think. I grew up. That's what I said. When I grew up, I as a kid, my mom and dad said that I never played. I just went hunting or I worked with my dad, and I didn't know no different. So
Hmm.
that's all I ever wanted to do was ranch.
Hmm.
So I really didn't have no other
Uh-huh.
anything else that I wanted to do. So
Well, it's
yeah,
great. It sounds like you've got a really, nice,
yeah,
a good setup and everything, and you still get to have an excuse to kind of explore other parts of the country, like
yeah,
going to New
and
York and
that's
the East Coast and stuff.
yeah, that is it's technology and transportations and stuff is a wonderful thing. Plus, uh, my granddad said that when he was running cows and getting going, he figured one man for every 100 cows, and now we're running 700 with two people virtually, and
Wow.
so and that's because of technology and
Mm.
things like that. It's it's made things easier and harder and more expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's a blessing and a curse, and I'm sure that when you look back, there's always all these technological developments that have kind of happened along the way to get us to where we are. And
yeah. My wife's grandfather, they lived in Kansas. She was from Kansas, and so I was talking to him one time, and he said so. And he had always been using horses and went to a tractor. And I said, so did that help anything? And he said, no. With horses, they'd get tired and would have to quit for the day. With tractor, you'd spend way more hours out there because the tractor didn't get tired. It didn't.
mm,
That didn't change nothing. The hours were still there.
yeah,
So
you
yeah,
can just do more with it, I guess.
yeah. You just change it different. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Well, I was thinking of neighbors and proximities. I have my neighbor upstairs has been is sanding their floors, which makes it basically sound like my apartment is a construction site. So I should probably wrap up.
Okay.
But I love to ask people like before we finish, like what like ask about like talk about hope, because there's so much like out there that's not that the news immediately shares with us that is not necessarily hopeful.
Yeah.
But can I ask, like, what gives you hope at the end of the day?
Well, my grandkids, uh, neighbors, as far as, I said I get along good with my neighbors. And that's really, if you don't have a good relationship with your neighbors, you're in trouble. And we get along really well. We help each other and do different things and grandkids. And, just that makes it a lot better. You don't want to watch the news, national news, international news. It just, it can ruin your day if you spend too much time on that. And I don't know if it's sad, but we've always
Yeah.
got to hope that something's going to get better.
Yeah. Well, I think that the news is doing what it's always done. It's just now supercharged
Yeah.
with technology, but they've always been oriented towards showing the extremes
Hmm.
and showing the stuff that'll get outrage and make you glued to the television.
Oh, yeah.
It's always been that way. It's just a little. I think it's worse now because of what technology allows them to know and access.
Yes.
If you want to look at a country of 330 million people, you can cherry pick a whole lot of craziness,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, boy. You sure can. And there's crazy people everywhere. There's no
Exactly.
question. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think there's far more sane people and good people out there than you're gonna see. Because what's the point of just showing people talking and getting
Yeah.
along and learning about each other?
That's exactly
but
right.
but that's what this podcast is about, and I've really appreciated the chance to talk with you. So thank you
Okay.
so much,
Well,
John.
thank you, Michael. Well,
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure.
okay. I
Okay,
hope I
thank you to
helped.
our yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you to our listeners. May you go out and explore our great country with curiosity, respect, compassion, and humility. All right, take care, John. Thank you so much.
Bye
All right.
bye.
Hello.
I wanted to say hi to Jaqua's friend.
Yeah.
It's so nice to meet you. I'm
And
so glad he could
don't
connect
believe
us.
any of the stories he tells about his mother-in-law.
He speaks only glowingly of his time out there. So
Yeah.
Would you
I'm
like
so thrilled that we get a chance to meet.
yeah,
Yeah.
would you like to meet his nephews and niece?
Sure.
Come here, guys.
Hello.
This is Nora.
Hi, Nora. Nice to meet
There's
you.
Mark.
Hi,
There's
Mark. Nice to
TJ.
meet you.
So they're
All right. Hey,
country
guys. How
kids.
you
If
doing?
you ever want to talk to country kids, we have a bunch.
That would be awesome. Wait, how old is everybody?
I'm 10.
Okay.
She's 5 and I'm 13.
Okay, great. Well, I have a daughter who's 16 and a son who's 12 and a son who's 10. So
Okay.
it's really good to
Right
meet you
in
guys.
there.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Nice to meet you
you.
guys.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care, John.